really very excited to be here. 2 years ago, I was involved in the launch event in Wales with Jeff Petty, looking at ideas for supported experiments. I met loads of teachers and managers who wanted to develop practice, to share ideas, to try new things. So today has been a date on my diary for some time of much excitement. I am really going to be thrilled to hear what people have been working on and see what development can happen going forward to take the work that you've done into the next part of the journey. For me, really, this is a stopping point, a breathing point for you in this process of learning to experiment, to share practice more, to innovate, to embed lots of the evidence-based methods that we had training on with Jeff some time ago. In England, where a lot of the experiments are happening at the moment, the supported experiments model has been dominant maybe for the last 5 years. People are talking about the excitement of collaborating, of sharing, of really trying something new. So this afternoon it's going to be interesting to see whether some of the views you see here are echoed as we walk around the building and look at the learning fair and also hear from the presenters this afternoon. What teachers are experimenting with in Wales, I think, is really interesting to focus on briefly. I'm seeing two different elements emerging. One thing is the big focus on evidence-based teaching methods that are strongly represented in research, methods that we can see do push up achievement. And as you can see from the slides, many of those are represented here. The second angle that I'm seeing represented is work that are around national initiatives about pushing up learners' skills linked to study skills, linked to employability. And I think we're trying to work on both of those areas in the experimental practice. For me, what's really strong here is that there's a really big focus on learner engagement, learner improvement, and that cycle of trying to make sure we push progress forward with our learners. It's not just experimenting for fun for us, it's about what we can do with the learners. The benefits that I can see looking at the summary documents coming through from the colleges, lots of people talking about the benefit of sharing with colleagues, building strength in the ideas that you're experimenting with, increasing your confidence to try things further, developing that practice and having chance to reflect in more depth through the experiment cycle. And I think when I see the work in England happening, that's one of the benefits that many colleges identify. Also, on the flip side of that, we've got the response from the learners. Many people commenting on the engagement with learners, the increasing work on the learner voice that happens when you experiment, but you discuss that learning process with the learners more than you might have done before the experiments actually started. And what's really encouraging for me and very exciting is we can see on the feedback from colleges some improvement in the observation profiles in many contexts, but also in actual achievement for learners happening in some courses. That's hugely encouraging and I think gives you a great starting point for next year. The final point that I think maybe distinguishes this piece of work from the work in England there are a lot of experiments happening. Colleges tend to be really isolated. They can be quite competitive. They can often be quite protective of their work, their resources, their practice. In Wales, what's really, really excited me has been the sharing that I've seen happening through the Teaching and Learning Network. I've been supporting that in terms of the project planning and the coaching support for some of the facilitators. And at those meetings, which have been happening maybe termly, I've seen an immense openness, a sharing of resources, a sharing of approaches, and honesty about what's worked in experiments, and honesty about the glitches and the challenges, and the work that needs to go on with culture building to make experimental practice really come to life. I think Wales has got it right in terms of how to work together to push achievement on. I think England actually has a lot to learn from Wales in terms of collaborating together. Some of the outcomes I can see that are really tangible and practical. Lots of different resources being created as a result of the experiments. And I love this because I think that next year, those can then be a platform into further work, into broadening that knowledge in your institutions. One of the things I'm interested to see is how these resources come out of colleges and get shared more broadly across the wider network here so that more people can benefit from them. Wonderful to see so many tangible things coming out of the first year of this piece of work, I think. Part of the work has been practical, but the second element that also is critical, I think, is this understanding of what is the framework for experimentation and how does a college experiment effectively. In the write-ups that I've seen so far, lots of the colleges are speaking about the challenge of keeping up momentum, of having a project leader, of defining the roles within experiments. And I think that learning has moved a long way this year. There's a lot more work to be done next year to really embed that practice. So some of the things that I see as the common features of experiments in Wales, this strong ethos of sharing, the big focus on the skills for employability and future study for learners, and really trying to build a more innovative culture within colleges so that it becomes standard practice to try ideas and share with colleagues and build that forward into improving learning. Really exciting conversations are to be had, I think, this afternoon about where to take this work. In England, there are more models evolving out of the supported experiments framework. People are evolving action research projects that are quite substantial, ending in people writing actually a journal about the work that they've done or sharing that work more nationally at conferences. Some colleges are also working on something called the Learning Communities model, which is more about teachers mentoring each other and actually providing expertise and working on problems together. Not such a coaching approach, but more of a mentoring and sharing expertise model. In some English colleges, this has involved the support staff, the business staff, also becoming part of the experimental cycle, and the groups becoming cross-department within the organisation, producing some really interesting conversations about pushing up achievement for learners and improving the learner's experience more broadly. I think that's an interesting form to think about for models for next year. Use of technology is definitely coming to the fore. Many colleges in England talking about trying to use flipped learning, mobile applications, use of smartphones, etc., in a way to enhance learning. So not technology for gadgets, but technology for bridging the gap between the classroom and home, and encouraging particularly younger learners to actually engage in the way that they do engage with life and information, and to bring that into the way the teaching is delivered. Lots of quite experimental, interesting work happening around that. I think going forward, there's definitely a question for Wales about partnership, about how colleges could maybe collaborate together. I know some of the colleges here who are now in a group are sharing practice. I think there's potential from the Learning Fair, what you will see happening this afternoon, for colleges maybe to form wider links to have developmental practice groups happening across institutions. And I think that practice could be quite interesting. In some institutions this year, I've also seen a great development of coaching expertise. Several colleges have had teaching and learning facilitators supporting colleagues to reflect effectively. So coaching skills have actually been developing alongside the experimental practice and the evidence-based teaching base as well. Going forward, one of the things that I think could be interesting to consider might well be workshops in the sector between colleges where expertise gets shared in more depth than maybe you can do today. And I think fostering links beyond Wales could be quite interesting. I'm really interested now looking at the colleges I work with in England to see whether there are links I could make with colleges here so practice could get shared at a broader scale. Finally, just a few comments from people in different colleges in England, and we'll see if that's reflected in what you've experienced in your experience here. People talking about the benefit of sharing practice, of really having a little bit of space and time for that, and the skills that you can get from it. Lots of people in England talking about the excitement of that, the liberation of that, and that hasn't been part of their practice previous to this piece of work. And a final comment from the learners who are the centre of this work that we're doing. Interesting to see learners' comments on the experiments that we've been doing. I'm hoping this afternoon we'll see some evidence of that, maybe some video clips, some feedback. The learners' comments on the methods that you're trying, I think, can be highly revealing and very insightful. Two comments that I loved from two colleges in England. Learners understanding the benefit for them of the work, and teachers feeling very rewarded and excited by that fact. Lovely. Thank you very much for that.